is relevant, and there's no better way to get into it than to get all the way the hell into this, which is to say that um, the talk itself. Hold on. Okay. The reason that it's taken me so long to do this is because I'm a perfectionist and I have a certain aesthetic in my mind that I'm going for. And instead of being able to know how to do that right off the bat and learning on the job and just figuring it out and doing the content anyway, I've stalled over all of the minutia of getting all the things right. So that will come in time. So just bear with me of the creating of the film of it all. So you guys will get to see the evolution of. Hopefully, I'll become a much better content creator as far as the fancy production value of it all. However, right now I'm here for the work, and I think it's important that that is kind of like my whole bumper sticker for the moment. Is I'm really here to talk about some things that I think might be helpful. One of them is the same topics that I talked about during the project management chapter meeting, which is what do you do if you find yourself in a very dysfunctional workflow environment and you are a project owner, project manager, program manager, and it's on you to deliver the job. What do you do? Well, I have three things that I can impart to you about this. Number one is if you don't understand the workflow that you are participating in, you are responsible for from soup to nuts, then you have no way to manage the risk. You have no business accepting any kind of deadline, and you have no business using individual heroic effort to try to get that job done, which is mostly what happens with project managers, is they sort of jump in with their full body and take the weight and fill the gaps of organizational dysfunction just by default because they have to. So what I can impart is kind of just a way of thinking, really. And you'll know what I mean when I start to go through this is that one of the things that you can do is you can oversimplify it to the point where it is the only way forward to make things so organizationally broad and simple to then start refining what the problems really are. But you have to start somewhere. And for me, I'm always thinking about categorically where can I put whatever this particular thing is that I'm suffering from into what bucket or what category, at least to place it somewhere where I can start to unpack it. So at core, that's the one big message is to oversimplify things here to be able to start somewhere. And the second thing is sort of a three-pronged approach, which is the only thing you can do is number one, figure out what you can change on your own and you don't need anyone's permission or anything. Things that you can do that you have control over. Number two is you can figure out what's wrong in order to build a business case. And when I say business case, that doesn't have to be sort of a brief or something that's specific or in depth necessarily. Can be. Doesn't have to be. But if you find someone who will support you to help you get the change that you need in order to unblock the things that you're blocked by, that's number two. So you can whatever you can do yourself, whatever you can get support for if you can't do it. And the third thing is, quite frankly, maybe more realistically, some things might not change. And in fact, for a lot of project managers, they sit at the bottom of systems they have absolutely no influence over and no ability to create organizational change. So the third thing is that you can just learn and upskill yourself through it, which means you could grow from the experience, you could learn more things, and you can take those things with you. And it'll, I guarantee you, make your job a little bit easier once you're able to understand what it is that's exactly wrong, rather than all of this stuff happening to you. It sort of just takes you from a reactive mindset to a proactive one. And I mean, what choice do you have? I mean, really, I mean, of the two things, either sort of get dumped on and not be able to explain exactly why. It's really hard to ask for help if you don't know what you're asking for. So again, this isn't prescriptive, meaning that if you do these things that they will work, or is to say that there's so many specific instances of how these things would show up in your particular situation. But if you pull back holistically, simply, these are some things that hopefully you can take with you, maybe to start to think about things differently. Okay. All right. So number one is, right? Whoa, 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 whoa. Number one is, right, how did we get here? And the reason that I think that this is important is because it contextualizes exactly why we're in the state of affairs that we're in. And I think that you can only move forward once you have a grasp on exactly what the factors are that got you here. And maybe that's just me. I think it's helpful to find a through line here. And so just bear with me on this because I think it matters. And there's another piece that goes along with this. And as a consultant or in any kind of like an advisory situation, I think I've heard this if I had a dollar for every time I've heard the way people try to think about fixing operational endeavors. Operations is a cost center and blah, 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 blah. Well, I have a lot of things to say about that because truthfully, it's tacked on to what I'm going to be showing here, and I'll add this to it, is that we're sort of working off a 100-year-old blueprint of the way that things used to be done when like business was invented. And we kind of never course corrected in order to make the two, I think, sort of pivotal historical changes that we're have found ourselves in. Number one is going from when we just were on a factory line and just made widgets all day. It's pretty easy to quantify how many widgets were made per hour and how much those were cost. And at the end of the day, things make sense that you have to make those widgets faster in order to make more money. I mean, the math was like shockingly simple. Mid-century, people decided that intellectual capital would probably be the more realistic way of how people would work. Peter Drucker, the father of management consulting, coined the term knowledge work. So the intellectual capital replaced the physical capital of things. So you're no longer, picking things up and putting things down, right? You're thinking, strategizing, marketing, doing all the things like that. So really, really hard to measure productivity as such. People didn't really know what to do, so they kind of just bailed on it. They didn't really have or invest, unfortunately, into the systems holistically to be able to account for that. So instead, they just decided to measure things by how activity, basically. It's like, how busy do you look? Busy work as a metric of like, are you sending all the emails? Are you participating in all the meetings? And instead of really doubling down on how organizations at scale during different times through different types of technology as they evolved, things like cross-functional communication, which you obviously can't throw a rocker at any job description that doesn't have that as one of the main job functions of any new operations hire, program manager, project manager, is for them to establish all of this cross collaboration and communication and such. It's like, that's not a job description, nor is it a function of one person. That is holistically, fundamentally and structurally a part of workflow operations that should not be, and it cannot be one person's job in order to do that. We'll get back to that. However, okay, so basically what I'm getting at is what's the history behind how did we get here, where exactly is here, and where do we go from here, right? So that's like kind of the structure of what I'm going for. Why talk about the past, right? Because we invented this way of doing things. Our friend Frederick Winslow Taylor, you don't know him. Most people don't know his name, but you certainly are familiar with his work, which basically is like he's the father of management in general. He basically separated the thinking from the doing, and all the artists and artisans and practitioners of a trade decided to don't worry so much about you deciding how things should be done. We're going to take all of that away from you, and we're going to manage you, and single-handedly created blue-collar and white-collar work right down the middle. Henry Ford, obviously, right around that time, tried to separate himself from this character, Frederick. He was interested, and I quote, creating a de-skilled blue-collar workforce. So that was his goal, and he achieved that goal. And it basically set the tone for how people worked and thought about work for the better part of the 20th century. We're still, I mean, obviously, right, the thread, we're still pulling on we are still in the through line of these two characters in the way that we do things, because at an enterprise level, you know as well as I do, hierarchical management's still a thing, and we suffer from it being structurally wrong and never course corrected, and we're about to do it again with AI. But again, that is a different episode. Okay, mid 20th century, Peter Drucker One of his famous quotes, as you all have heard it, what gets measured gets improved. We've all heard that quote. Unfortunately, that spread like wildfire. To me, one of his least interesting and more damaging legacies, because, first of all, who gets to decide what those metrics are? Because, same thing, they're not always the things that actually matter at the end of the day, right? Here's another quote: management is doing things right, leadership is doing the right things. So if there's, again, one of the big red flag moments of this entire thing that I'm trying to get across is the fact that there is good project management starts and stops at good leadership. End of story. They are responsible for creating the environments where good work can happen. I mean, otherwise, it is just every heroic individual effort of people who are managing projects through systems that don't work, and that in and of itself becomes the job. You could be a mediocre project manager, but if you're highly political or you're very charismatic or you have a lot of social capital, sometimes you can be a very good project manager by virtue of all those things. Or if you're maybe a person who just loves the data and you're not an outward person and you're an introvert and you don't really like to do all the bullshit, you might not be considered a good project manager, because basically if it's based on individual effort and personality for you to take the things that you need to do around an organization to get what you need to do done, that's not an organizational structure. That's individual effort standing in for social, for structure, basically. So late in the 20th century, right? The measurement of activity over effectiveness, because that's really all that was left. They didn't know what to do, so they just basically said, just move things around and send lots of emails and look busy. Then the 2000s rolled around, and I'm going to add two things which I did not touch on in my PMI talk because, I mean, we weren't here for necessarily all of this history, but I want to point it out just because. So we were promised productivity, we were promised technology, and unfortunately the technology came without the transformation, which meant, as an organization, you're basically just pushing stuff around through email at scale. And as a project manager, it's your job to compile, aggregate, download, take that email, analyze it, put it in some sort of project management software, a sheet of paper, a spreadsheet, whatever it is, and just keep putting that back up into the cloud of the system to give everyone their status reports. It's just the most ineffective, most convoluted. I mean, email was never intended to be what it is. It's the backbone of modern business, and it literally was like made for academics by academics. They're like, Jeff, did you get my worm research? It was never intended to be the way that we do workflow. Like, we get our jobs done, we communicate, we do all of the things. And if that isn't your sole function, this is why I get dead eyes for 3 years about people with like the severity in which I'm talking about what is broken in workflows. If you are not a project owner, if you are not a project manager, and it is not your sole job to take all of these factors at every single part of getting something done, if it's not your job to do that, you're kind of less concerned with the things that I'm talking about. You don't really get it, and that's okay. And I spent so much time arguing with people about project management and the function of it and the lack of structure and organizational support for this thing, because I'm going to break this down. And if I have one hill to die on, it's this: your strategy, your marketing, your analytics, your AI, none of it fucking matters if you can't deliver the products and services that you are selling to your clients and customers. The last mile of delivery, the people who are managing your products and talking to your clients and giving them, selling them, the end thing, the thing that pays the bills. What are you doing? What are you selling? Does that thing have a customer or a client? That is the most important thing. Upscale, if you want to talk about, Gary and the CMO marketer wants to talk about, I don't know the CAC of what it takes now to get a customer and how much we have to understand how AI is affecting SEO. Listen, Gary, none of it matters. None of your bullshit matters when downstream the people who are touching the very thing that you are delivering to your customer, and they are failing spectacularly at it because all of the systems that they're touching, and working through and working against do not give them the environments that they need to do it successfully, easily, without friction, all of it. None of what you're doing up there matters worth a shit if you can't successfully deliver what it is that you're selling. I mean, come on. Honestly, ridiculous. Anyway, so when I say, how did we get here? We got here because big institutional misses happened during very pivotal moments of change, which is mostly to do with technology, twice now, which is the 2.0 of it all, which was the internet, and now we have AI, and that's a whole other thing. Again, story for a different day. But where we are is, I'm just going to read through some stats here. 70%, and that even probably, I'm not even sure how accurate that is, but let's just start with it. 70% of projects fail to deliver. People spend 18 to 20 hours. This is research, but I also think this is wildly conservative. People spend 80 to 20 hours a week in meetings. 48% of employees, again, I think that's low, report burn. I mean, who are they reporting? I mean, that sect, I mean, obviously it's just supposed to give you the metric of what that means. Everyone is burnt out from what we are doing right now, because most of what's happening right now is kind of at a standstill. So everyone is doing more with less, and trying to make it more efficient and automated. And again, stay tuned, because the whole automation factor is we're going to get back to that. 40% of your productive time per day is lost to context switching, and that means trying to find information across different unconnected apps, trying to cross-collaborate, cross-communicate, do deep dive research in one area, and do the admin of pulling all these things and recreating all of these status reports and dashboards and this, that, and the other thing. We're fighting against the very tools that have promised productivity and ease. 40%. And then if you take from that 40%, however much time you're still spending in meetings, like, what's left at the end of the day? And that's why, like, I mean, I know everyone suffers from it. I felt like I didn't get anything done today. Probably because you didn't, right? And most of the things that we do are dictated by the openings on your Outlook calendar. Like, that's actually the only thing that's really tracking progress, is that when people are available enough to get onto a meeting to do the thing. Yet that's not how deadlines work. And that certainly has a very different vantage point if you're sitting from the seat that it is your job, literally, in order to deliver those on those deadlines. That looks a lot differently than just someone you're trying to track down to get to a meeting to, you know, ask them something that you need to know from them, which probably should have been negotiated before this, which we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so part 3. What exactly is a broken workflow? I think people do know. I think people have just normalized the chaos so much to the fact that they kind of just think that this is what work is. That's just what it is. That is not true. It doesn't have to be this way. It just is this way, and there's some signs, and we all know them because we're living them, right? So power over process, which just means, you know, do it this way because I said so. And the only reason that you would is because you're in some hierarchical structures that you have to. And that's a really, really disheartening and very soul-crushing experience to know, very much so, that all these things that are supposed to be putting into the place, the people that you're supposed to be looking up to, are